I didn't realize my daughter had stopped visiting me until the day I walked past the spare bedroom and noticed the bed was still made exactly the way I had left it 3 months earlier. For a long time, I told myself she was just busy. Life moves fast when you're younger. Work, children, responsibilities, it all piles up in ways you don't fully understand until you've lived through it yourself. But the truth has a quiet way of settling into your chest when you finally stop making excuses for it. And one evening, standing alone in my hallway, I realized something I had been slowly avoiding for a long time. My daughter had stopped coming home. My name is Thomas. I'm 71 years old, and I still live in the same house where my daughter, Emily, grew up. It's a modest place on a quiet street. 2 bedrooms upstairs, a small kitchen, a living room that looks out onto the maple tree in the front yard. That tree has been there longer than either of us. When Emily was little, she used to collect the leaves every fall and press them inside books she forgot she owned. Sometimes I still find them. Thin, faded leaves inside old novels or photo albums. Little pieces of time that somehow survived longer than the moments they came from. Emily used to visit every Sunday. That had been our rhythm for years. After her mother passed away, the visits became something we both held on to. She would arrive sometime in the afternoon, usually with a grocery bag in one hand and her purse sliding off her shoulder. "Dad, you still buying the cheap coffee?" she'd say the moment she walked in. And I'd answer the same way every time. "It's not cheap. It's practical." She'd roll her eyes and put a better brand on the counter anyway. Those Sundays were simple. We'd cook something together, nothing complicated. Pasta, roast chicken, soup in the winter. Sometimes she brought her children when they were younger. The house would fill with noise again, the kind I hadn't realized I missed until it returned. Later in the evening we'd sit in the living room and talk. Not about anything particularly important most of the time. Just life. Her job, the kids, stories about people I didn't know but enjoyed hearing about anyway. The house felt alive again on those days. And then, slowly, the visits became less regular. At first there were good reasons. Emily's job had gotten more demanding. She worked in marketing for a small company that was growing quickly. She talked about deadlines and meetings and travel plans in a way that made me proud and tired at the same time. "I might not make it this Sunday," she said once over the phone. "We've got a project due Monday." "That's all right," I told her. "Work comes first." And I meant it. When you're a parent, you spend years telling your children to chase opportunities. You can't turn around later and resent them for doing exactly that. The following Sunday she came again, apologizing before she even stepped inside. "See? I didn't disappear," she said with a tired smile. But something had shifted, even then. The visits became every other week. Then once a month. Sometimes she'd call on Sunday afternoon instead. "I'll try to come next weekend," she'd say. And I'd answer the same way I always did. "Of course. Don't worry about it." The strange thing about distance is that it rarely arrives all at once. It grows quietly, in small gaps that seem harmless when they first appear. A missed visit here. A shorter conversation there. A phone call that feels rushed instead of relaxed. Each moment is easy to forgive on its own. But when you look back, they form a pattern you can't ignore. I remember one particular Sunday afternoon that stands out now. The house was very quiet that day. I had gone to the grocery store earlier, bought a few things Emily liked out of habit. A loaf of fresh bread from the bakery. The kind she always said tasted better toasted. I even made the soup she liked. Around 2 o'clock I checked my phone. Nothing. By 4 I started to wonder if maybe I had gotten the day wrong. It sounds foolish now, but I actually checked the calendar twice. Then the message arrived. "Sorry, Dad, today got away from me. Let's do next weekend." I sat at the kitchen table staring at the phone for a while before replying. "No problem. Hope everything's all right." And it was. Everything was always all right. That's the phrase adult children learn to use when they want to reassure you without explaining too much. Over time, Emily's life became something I mostly heard about through short updates. Her daughter had started high school. Her son was learning to drive. Her company was expanding. All good things. But they arrived in pieces, like headlines instead of conversations. The house felt different on Sundays now. I still woke up early. Old habits remain even after the reason for them disappears. I made coffee, read the news, watered the plants Emily had once insisted I keep alive. Sometimes I caught myself glancing at the driveway out of reflex, waiting for a car that wasn't coming. I didn't blame her. That's important to understand. Children grow into their own lives. That's the natural order of things. Every parent knows this, even if it hurts a little when it becomes real. But there's a difference between growing up and growing away. And somewhere along the line, I began to feel that difference. Months passed. The spare bedroom upstairs, the one Emily used when she stayed late or brought the kids overnight, remained untouched. The blanket folded neatly. The pillow exactly where I left it. Dust collecting slowly on the dresser. I didn't notice at first how long it had been since anyone slept there. One evening I walked upstairs to grab a toolbox from the closet and happened to look inside the room. Everything was exactly the same. That's when it occurred to me that the last time Emily had been in this house. I couldn't remember the exact date. That realization settled into my chest like a weight. I went back downstairs and sat in the living room with the lights off for a long time. The silence in the house felt heavier than usual. Later that night I called her. She answered after a few rings. "Hey, Dad." Her voice sounded distracted. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. "Just wanted to check in." "I'm actually just getting dinner ready," she replied quickly. "I won't keep you." We talked for maybe 3 minutes. She told me about a meeting she had the next morning. I told her the weather had finally started cooling down. Then she said, "I'll try to come by soon." Try. That word stayed with me long after we hung up. Because visiting your father shouldn't require trying. The moment everything became clear happened a few weeks later. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was at the hardware store buying a replacement bulb for the porch light. The old one had burned out earlier that week. It's funny how small tasks take on more meaning when you live alone. Replacing a light bulb can feel like an entire project. As I walked back to my car, I heard someone call my name. "Mr. Harris?" I turned and saw a woman I vaguely recognized. It took me a moment to place her. She lived a few streets away. Her son used to play baseball with Emily years ago. We exchanged the usual polite greetings. Then she said something that caught me off guard. "I saw Emily at the farmer's market last Sunday. Her kids are getting so tall." I smiled automatically. That's good to hear. But inside, something shifted. Last Sunday, Emily had told me she was working. The woman continued talking about the market for another minute or two, but I barely heard the words. All I could think about was that simple sentence. "I saw Emily last Sunday." I drove home slowly. Not angry. Not even hurt at first. Just aware. Sometimes clarity arrives like that. Not through confrontation or confession, but through a small detail that rearranges everything you thought you understood. When I got home, I walked through the house quietly. The living room. The kitchen. The hallway. Everything looked exactly the same as it always had. But it felt different. That evening I called Emily again. This time she answered quickly. "Hey, Dad." I hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I heard you were at the farmer's market last weekend." There was a pause. Not a long one. But long enough. "Oh," she said softly. "Yeah. We stopped by for a little while." I didn't accuse her of anything. I didn't ask why she hadn't mentioned it. Instead, I asked something simpler. "Why don't you come by anymore?" The silence on the other end of the line felt heavier this time. Finally, she said, "I didn't realize it had been that long." That answer was honest in a way that hurt more than an excuse would have. Because it meant the distance had grown so gradually she hadn't even noticed. We talked for a while after that. Really talked. For the first time in months. Emily told me her life had become overwhelming. Work, the kids, the constant feeling of being behind on everything. Sometimes I just need a quiet Sunday, she admitted. And I understood that. I truly did. But I also told her something I had been carrying quietly for a long time. This house feels different when you're not in it. She didn't respond right away. Then she said something I'll probably remember for the rest of my life. I guess I thought you were used to being alone. The words weren't cruel. Just honest. And honesty can sometimes reveal things we didn't realize about ourselves. Because the truth was, I had become used to it. But that didn't mean it didn't matter. Emily visited the following weekend. Not out of guilt, I don't think so anyway. She brought coffee again. The good kind. We sat at the kitchen table and talked for a long time, the way we used to. The visit didn't magically restore the old routine. Life still moves forward whether we want it to slow down or not. She still misses Sundays sometimes. Weeks still pass when the house stays quiet. But something changed after that conversation. Now when she calls, we talk longer. Sometimes she stops by unexpectedly for a quick visit. And when she leaves, she always says the same thing. I won't wait so long next time. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. At my age, I've learned that relationships rarely return to the exact shape they once had. They evolve. They stretch. Sometimes they grow quieter. But what matters isn't how often someone walks through your door. What matters is whether the door still feels open. Because the hardest lesson of getting older isn't realizing that your children have their own lives. It's understanding that love doesn't always look the same as it did when they were small. Sometimes it arrives less often. Sometimes it comes in shorter visits. Sometimes it exists mostly in phone calls and promises. But if you listen closely, it's still there. And for me, that's enough reason to keep the spare bedroom ready, just in case she decides to come home next Sunday.